The system's unstable. Isolate the sector.
I'm on it, rerouting traffic. Logs show a breach.
Patch it now.
Get away from that terminal. Park Ha-jun's voice cut across the 14th floor like a fire alarm. Sharp, sudden, impossible to ignore. Every keyboard in the room stopped. Zara Mitchell didn't stop. Her fingers kept moving across the keys, steady and unhurried. Like his voice was whether she had already checked the forecast for and decided wasn't worth an umbrella. Ms. Mitchell. Closer now. He had crossed the room in long, deliberate strides and was standing directly behind her chair. I will not repeat myself. Step away from that terminal. Now, then don't repeat yourself, she said. She still didn't look up. The room made a sound, not quite a gasp, not quite silence. Something in between. The sound of 23 people deciding, simultaneously, not to move. Park Ha-jun's hand came down on the desk beside her keyboard. Flat. Hard. The kind of gesture that was not quite touching her, but was designed to feel like a wall. This terminal requires senior clearance. You are a contractor. A documentation contractor. You do not have the authority. Mr. Park. Zara's fingers paused. Just for a breath. Then she turned and looked at him. Directly, steadily, with the particular calm of someone who has already calculated every exit in the room and decided they don't need any of them. Arya has been down for 13 minutes. Your ministry officials are still sitting in that room. And your senior team, she glanced at the frozen engineers behind him, hasn't moved past the diagnostic layer. She turned back to the screen. So you can remove me from this chair, she said, or you can let me work. But you cannot do both and also save this demonstration. Park Ha-jun's jaw was a straight line. The Arya efficiency counter on the main screen was still dark. Still silent. A flat zero that was costing ShinTech Global approximately $400 million for every minute it stayed that way. 8 seconds passed. Then Park Ha-jun straightened up and stepped back. 1 inch. That was all. But in that room, at that moment, 1 inch was everything. Zara went back to typing. You felt that, didn't you? One woman. One chair. An entire room holding its breath. Stay with us. Because they still don't know who she is. And when they find out, nothing in this building will ever be the same. Subscribe so you don't miss a single second. 3 days earlier, Zara Mitchell had stepped off the elevator on the 14th floor of ShinTech Global, carrying a second-hand laptop bag and a convenience store coffee. And the first thing that happened was a receptionist reached for the visitor's badge tray. Delivery entrance is on the 2nd floor, the young woman said. Carefully. In English. Zara looked at the badge tray, then at the woman. Then she placed her contractor ID flat on the desk. Zara Mitchell, she said. Systems integration contractor. I start today. The silence that followed was 2 seconds longer than it needed to be. The office was everything she expected. Glass partitions, standing desks. The deliberate minimalism of a company that had decided its aesthetics should communicate what its balance sheet already said. Engineers moved between workstations with the ease of people who had never once questioned whether they belonged there. Zara read the room in 4 seconds. Then she walked to her desk. Park Ha-jun appeared from behind a glass partition. Charcoal blazer, angular face. The composed expression of a man who had spent 7 years at ShinTech learning how to make authority look effortless. He looked at Zara the way people look at a forecast they've already decided to ignore. Ms. Mitchell, he said, your workstation is in Section C near the back. He turned before he finished the sentence. We move fast here. Try to keep up. I'll manage, Zara said. He was already gone. Section C was where ShinTech kept its contractors. Away from the windows. Away from the whiteboards. Wedged between a cable organizer and a printer that blinked orange every 40 seconds like a slow, tired heartbeat. Zara sat down, opened her laptop, and got to work. She didn't ask for a window. She had learned in a federal hearing room in Washington, D.C., with 3 lawyers and a congresswoman watching her dismantle her own career to tell the truth, that the workspace didn't matter. The work did. And the work she had always been very good at. The first team meeting was that afternoon. 12 engineers. A long glass table. Zara at the far end, which was not an accident. Park Ha-jun stood at the front, projecting the architecture of Aria, ShinTech's AI defense integration system, scheduled for a live demonstration to South Korean ministry officials in 9 days. Efficiency is at 94%, he said. We need 99.2 by demonstration day. The latency spike in the third relay node is still unresolved, an engineer reported. 2 weeks of patch cycles. Nothing holds. We'll resolve it, Park Ha-jun said. Zara looked at the projection. She had seen that latency pattern before. Not here. Somewhere louder. More consequential. Her mind filed the observation the way it filed everything. Quietly, completely, without announcing itself. Then Park Ha-jun looked at her. Ms. Mitchell, your role is supporting documentation. Log system outputs, flag anomalies, submit them for senior review. He said it the way people close doors, not violently, just finally. Understood, Zara said. The engineer beside her, young, careful-eyed, the only person in the room who had nodded when she sat down, kept his gaze on his notepad. His name tag read Choi Byum-soo. After the meeting, he caught up with her in the corridor. I think you were about to say something useful in there, he said. Quietly. The way people say things they're not sure they should. Zara looked at him. How long has the latency spike been happening? Since Aria crossed 94%. About 3 weeks. Before this system, did ShinTech acquire another company? Defense Technology. Choi Byum-soo frowned. Daejin Systems. 2 years ago. Why? No reason, Zara said. Not yet. She stayed late that evening. Section C was empty by 7. The server room hummed. Zara pulled Aria's back-end access logs, within her contractor clearance, even if nobody expected her to use it, and read 3 weeks of system reports. By 9:30, she had found what 40 engineers had missed. It wasn't the third relay node. It was never the third relay node. Aria's cascade algorithm was attempting to handshake with a legacy protocol buried 4 layers inside the original Daejin Systems architecture. Inherited during the acquisition, never audited, never detected. Every time Aria reached 97% efficiency, the legacy protocol sent a ghost signal that fractured the relay sequence from the inside. It looked like a node problem because that's where the damage appeared. But the wound was deeper, older. Zara sat back in her chair. 11 minutes. That's how long the fix would take if someone gave her access to the core system. She drank her cold coffee. Then she went home. Day 3. Morning stand-up. Aria still at 94.3%. The engineers looked like people who had been running in a direction they were beginning to suspect was wrong. We've rerouted through the secondary node, someone reported. No improvement. Has anyone considered, Zara said from the far end, that the problem isn't the node? The room shifted. Park Ha-jun turned to her with the patience of a man who had decided, before she spoke, that whatever she said would not be useful. Ms. Mitchell, the architecture team handles node diagnostics. Your role is documentation, she said. I remember. He held her gaze for exactly 1 second. Then he turned back to the projection. Choi Byum-soo exhaled quietly beside her. After the meeting, he found her in Section C. You know what's wrong, don't you? He said. It wasn't a question. I know exactly what's wrong, she said. Then why won't you? Because knowing and being heard are 2 different things, she said. And I haven't earned the second one yet. Choi Byum-soo was quiet for a moment. What do you need? He asked. Zara looked at him steadily. This was the moment. She had been waiting for it. Core system access, she said. Not the diagnostic layer. The core. That needs senior authorization. I know, she said. But you know someone who has it. And more importantly, she turned her screen toward him, showing him the ghost signal buried in Aria's diagnostic data. You're looking at 3 weeks of your senior team solving the wrong problem with 9 days left. Choi Byum-soo stared at the screen. His face changed, slowly. The way faces change when something they suspected becomes something they cannot deny. If this goes wrong, he said, we both lose our jobs. If this goes wrong in 9 days in front of the Defense Ministry, Zara said, losing jobs will be the least of ShinTech's problems. The printer blinked orange. Choi Byum-soo pulled out his access card. She built the fix in 9 minutes. deployed it in 11. They watched the screen together. 95.1, 96.8, 98.2. Choi Byum-soo stopped breathing somewhere around 97. 99.1. Then, 99.4%. He made a sound that had no word attached to it. Clear the session, Zara said quietly. Go back to your desk. We need to tell someone. The diagnostic cycle will report the improvement in the morning, she said. Let it. Why don't you want? Because the right moment hasn't come yet, she said. And when it does, I'll know. She fixed it. In 11 minutes. What 40 engineers couldn't solve in 3 weeks. And she told nobody. Are you understanding the kind of woman we're dealing with? Drop a comment. What would you have done in her position? Like this video and stay with us, because the moment she's been waiting for is 3 days away, and it arrives like a disaster. The next morning, Park Ha-jun checked the overnight diagnostic report and stopped moving. ARIA, 99.4% efficiency. He called 2 senior engineers into his office. Read it with them. Read it again. Then he walked to Section C. Zara was at her desk, logging outputs. Coffee beside her. Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Park. The overnight improvement. I flagged a legacy handshake anomaly in the Daejin base architecture and submitted it for review, she said. Standard documentation, as assigned. The patch that followed was above my clearance level, she said pleasantly. So I wouldn't know anything about that. She looked up at him. Her expression was open, cooperative, utterly unreadable. Park Ha-jun stood there for 5 seconds. Then he walked away, and Zara went back to her coffee. Demonstration day. The 14th floor had transformed, ministry officials in dark suits, executive team in a composed row, cameras, interpreters, the particular electricity of a moment that had been months in the making. Zara was not on the demonstration team. She sat in Section C. At 10:47 a.m., ARIA went live. At 10:49 a.m., every screen in the building went dark. The ministry's own secure network had handshaked with ARIA during the live demonstration, triggering a secondary conflict in the same Daejin legacy layer. Different entry point. Same wound. Total cascade failure. 11 minutes of silence and controlled panic while the government officials watched and the executive team's carefully constructed confidence quietly collapsed. At minute 11, Choi Byum-soo appeared at Section C. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Zara was already standing, which brings us back to where we started. Zara Mitchell sitting in Park Ha-jun's chair. Park Ha-jun standing 1 inch behind her, having just made the hardest decision of his professional life, which was to make no decision at all and simply step back. The room watching. The ministry officials watching. ARIA climbing 97.1, 98.4, 99.1, 99.6%. Zara stopped typing. The demonstration screen flickered. Then came alive, clean, full, exactly as it had been designed to look. ARIA's interface bloomed across the projection wall like something that had never been broken. The lead ministry official leaned toward his interpreter. The interpreter spoke. The official nodded slowly. Then he did something nobody in the room expected. He began to applaud. 1 person, then 2. Then the entire ministry delegation. The ShinTech executive team exhaled as one organism. Park Ha-jun did not applaud. He was still looking at Zara. She had stood up from his chair, picked up her laptop bag, and was walking calmly, without theater, back toward Section C. Ms. Mitchell. She stopped, turned. Park Ha-jun walked toward her. The room was still buzzing. Relief, applause, the sound of a disaster being quickly reframed as a success. Nobody was paying attention to the 2 of them. He stopped in front of her. How, he said. Just that. 1 word with a very long question behind it. Zara looked at him for a moment. You had a legacy protocol from Daejin Systems living in ARIA's base architecture, she said. It triggered whenever an external secure network attempted synchronization. Your team was solving the output. I solved the source. He absorbed this. You knew, he said. You knew before the demonstration. I suspected, she said. The demonstration confirmed it. Then why didn't you? You told me my role was documentation, Mr. Park, she said. I documented. She held his gaze for exactly as long as it took for him to understand what she meant. Then she turned and walked back to Section C. Park Ha-jun stood in the middle of the floor, surrounded by celebration, completely alone with the arithmetic of what had just happened. She didn't just fix the system. She made him do the math himself. That is not luck. That is not coincidence. That is a woman who has been in rooms like this before and knows exactly how they end. The celebration lasted 40 minutes. Champagne appeared from somewhere. The ministry officials shook hands with the executive team. Photographs were taken in front of the Aria projection wall. Everyone arranged carefully. Everyone smiling the specific smile of people who had just survived something they would never fully admit to surviving. Park Ha-jun was in 3 of the photographs. Zara was in none of them. She sat in Section C, finishing her documentation report, logging the anomaly flag she had submitted 2 days earlier and the subsequent system improvement that had, officially, according to ShinTech's records, resolved itself. Choi Byum-soo appeared at her desk when the noise from the presentation room had settled into the low hum of departing officials and self-congratulation. He sat down in the empty chair beside her. Neither of them spoke for a moment. They're calling it a successful demonstration, he finally said. It was, Zara said. You saved this company $400 million, and they don't even know your name. They know my name, she said. They just haven't decided what it means yet. Choi Byum-soo looked at her. The afternoon light came through the gap between the server room wall and the cable organizer, the only light that reached Section C, and it made the whole corner feel like the pause between 2 very different chapters of a story. Who are you? He asked. Quietly, genuinely. The way people ask questions when they've already sensed the answer will be larger than they're prepared for. Zara closed her laptop. Someone who made the mistake of telling the truth at the wrong time, she said, and paid for it. She stood up, picked up her bag, and nodded at him once, the kind of nod that meant thank you without making either of them uncomfortable about it. Then she went home. That night, in her rented apartment in Mapogu, small, clean, deliberately sparse, the apartment of a person who had stopped investing in permanence, Zara Mitchell sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea she forgot to drink and looked at nothing in particular. She was thinking about Houston. She always came back to Houston eventually. 5 years earlier, the Kwan Energy Summit had drawn executives from 14 countries to a converted exhibition hall in downtown Houston. Zara had been there as a NASA systems consultant, one of 3 technical advisors brought in to observe the energy sector's integration of new satellite communication protocols. She had been sitting in a glass-walled corridor outside the main hall, reviewing signal reports on her laptop, when the lights went out. Not a power cut. She knew what power cuts felt like. This was different, targeted, layered, the kind of darkness that announced itself with the simultaneous failure of every network system in the building. Emergency lighting came on in strips of pale red. Somewhere deep in the building, alarms began their flat, mechanical conversation with each other. A cyber attack. Sophisticated. Already inside the building's infrastructure, before anyone detected it. Zara had her laptop open before the alarms completed their first cycle. What followed was 47 minutes that she had never, in 5 years, fully described to anyone. Not because she couldn't. Because the people who needed to understand it most were the same people who later decided she was too inconvenient to keep employed. She had contained the breach from a corridor. Using her NASA clearance credentials, a portable signal router she carried as standard equipment, and a particular understanding of layered network architecture that most people needed a full team and 3 days to replicate. She had sealed the attack at its source, a ghost entry point buried in the building's legacy communication system, which the attackers had exploited with surgical precision. It was the second time in her career she had encountered that specific type of legacy protocol exploit. She filed away. When the lights came back, she found 3 people still trapped in a collapsed section of the building's lower corridor, a structural failure triggered by the attack overloading the building's automated systems. She had guided emergency responders to them via radio, relaying structural coordinates from the building's own compromised blueprint system, which she had partially restored. One of the three people was a Korean man, quiet, composed even under the debris, a bruised shoulder, a laceration above his left eye that bled more than it deserved to. He had looked at her in the pale emergency lighting and said, in careful English, "You know what you're doing." Usually, she had said. His name, she learned later from a news report, was Kwon Sung-min, majority shareholder of Kwon Industries. Net worth, the kind of number that stopped feeling like a number and started feeling like a concept. She never spoke to him again after that corridor. 3 months later, she filed her report against her defense contractor employer, exposing a critical AI safety flaw they had buried to protect a government contract, and the industry she had given 15 years to close its doors to her simultaneously, quietly, and completely. She had not thought about Kwon Sung-min since. Until now. She picked up her tea. It was cold. She drank it anyway. That corridor in Houston. That moment. That is the thread that connects everything. And it's about to pull tight. If you're just joining us, subscribe and start from the beginning. If you've been here from the first minute, you already know this story is about to turn. The morning after the demonstration, ShinTech's 14th floor had the particular atmosphere of a place that had narrowly avoided catastrophe and was now performing normalcy with slightly too much commitment. People laughed a little louder. Conversations lasted a little longer. The champagne from the previous afternoon had done its work. Park Ha-jun arrived at 8 a.m. precisely. He went directly to his office, closed the door, and did not open it for 2 hours. At 10:15, he came out and walked to Section C. Zara was at her desk. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "I'd like you to join the senior architecture meeting this morning." She looked up. His face was composed, professional. It had cost him something to say those words, and he was determined not to show how much. "As a note-taker," she said. A pause. "As a contributor," he said. Zara studied him for a moment. Then she nodded and picked up her notepad. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. Zara spoke 4 times. Each time, she said something that redirected the conversation so precisely that the engineers around the table spent the following minutes building on it without quite realizing she had handed them the foundation. Park Ha-jun watched her the way a person watches something they are in the process of recategorizing, carefully, with the specific discomfort of a mind being asked to update itself against its own resistance. After the meeting, as engineers filtered out, he stopped beside her chair. "Your background," he said. "It isn't systems integration contracting." "No," she said. "Then what is it?" She looked at him steadily. "NASA," she said. "Aerospace and AI systems engineering. 15 years. Then a defense contractor for 2. Then a federal hearing room. Then here." The words landed in the order she intended them to, each one slightly heavier than the last. Park Ha-jun was quiet for a long moment. "The federal hearing," he said carefully. "I reported my employer for burying a safety flaw in an AI defense system," she said. "The flaw would have caused navigation failures in military aircraft under specific atmospheric conditions. They knew. They filed it and kept the contract. And you told the truth," she said, which, as it turned out, the industry found much more disruptive than the flaw itself. She stood up. "Is there anything else, Mr. Park?" He looked at her for a long time. "I owe you an apology," he said. The sentence seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. "You treated me the way this industry taught you to," she said. "I'm not interested in your apology. I'm interested in whether you're willing to treat the next person differently." She picked up her bag and walked out. Park Ha-jun stood in the empty meeting room for a very long time after she left. It was the following Tuesday when the elevator doors opened on the 14th floor and everything changed. Zara knew something was different before she saw him. The floor had gone quiet in a specific way, not the startled quiet of the demonstration collapse, but the instinctive, organizational quiet of people who have suddenly detected a gravitational shift in the room. Assistants straightened. Conversations paused mid-sentence. The executive team's glass-walled office, which was usually a theater of deliberate calm, suddenly contained 3 people standing up at the same time. Then she saw him. He walked out of the elevator like a man who had long stopped noticing the effect his presence produced. Dark coat, no entourage, the particular unhurriedness of someone for whom urgency is a resource other people spent, not him. Kwon Sung-min. He was older than the news photographs. The Houston laceration had left a faint mark above his left eye that photographs flattened into invisibility. He was looking at his phone as he walked, and then he was not looking at his phone, and his eyes, moving across the floor with the practiced efficiency of a man who read rooms for a living, stopped. On Zara. 5 years collapsed into a single second. He crossed the floor toward her directly, without stopping at the executive office, without acknowledging the 3 senior directors who had materialized near the elevator to receive him. The floor watched. He stopped in front of her desk. "I wondered where you went," he said. In English. Quietly. Zara looked up at him. "Mr. Kwon," she said. "You're harder to find than I expected," he said. "For someone who once restored a compromised building network from a corridor with a portable router." "I wasn't trying to be found," she said. "I know," he said. "That's what took so long." Behind him, Park Ha-jun had appeared. The executive team behind him, a careful distance maintained. The entire hierarchy of ShinTech Global arranged in an involuntary semicircle around a conversation they could hear but not enter. Kwon Sung-min glanced back at them briefly. Then he looked at Zara again. "Walk with me," he said. They stood at the floor-to-ceiling window at the end of the corridor. Seoul spread below them in its vast, specific ambition, the Han River catching afternoon light in the distance. "I've been following your situation since Houston," Kwon Sung-min said. "The federal hearing. What happened after?" "Then you know the full version," Zara said. "I know you told the truth and it cost you everything," he said. "And I know you came to Seoul to start again, quietly. Which tells me you're either done fighting," he paused, "or you're choosing your battlefield." Zara said nothing. "The ARIA demonstration," he said. "I received the technical report this morning. The anomaly flag, the system improvement, the cascade failure during the live demonstration, and the subsequent resolution." He looked at her. 11 minutes. 13, she said. The first time. Faster the second. Something moved across his face. Not quite a smile. "The predecessor to one. I own 40% of ShinTech Global," he said. "I also own a controlling interest in 7 other technology firms across Asia and North America. And I have been looking for 3 years for someone to take the position of Chief Technology Officer across all of them." Zara turned from the window and looked at him directly. "That's 12 international offices," he said. "Full authority over systems architecture, hiring criteria, and operational culture. The kind of authority that lets you change things from the inside rather than report them from the outside." The corridor was very quiet. "Why me?" she said. Not defensively. Precisely. She needed to understand the architecture of the offer before she decided what to do with it. "Because in Houston," he said, "while everyone else in that building was waiting to be rescued, you were already solving the problem. And when you found the problem at your previous employer," his voice was level, "you reported it even though you knew what it would cost you." He paused. "I don't need someone brilliant. I can hire brilliant. I need someone who is brilliant and will still tell the truth when the truth is expensive." Zara looked at him for a long moment. "I'll need 72 hours, she said. "You have them," he said. 72 hours. That's all that stands between Zara Mitchell and the most powerful position she has ever held. And she's not celebrating. She's thinking. Because this woman does not make decisions, she makes commitments. Stay with us. She walked for a long time that evening. Seoul at night is not quiet. It is layered, lit, perpetually in the middle of something. Zara moved through Uedo, past the financial towers with their illuminated upper floors, past the Han River walkway where couples moved slowly and street vendors sold things that smelled like warmth. She was thinking about a hearing room in Washington, D.C. She was thinking about the moment the congressman across the table had looked at her and said, "Ms. Mitchell, do you understand what you're doing to your career?" And she had looked back at him and said, "Do you understand what happens to the pilots if I don't?" She was thinking about every qualified person she had ever watched be dismissed in meeting rooms, in corridors, in elevators, by people who had confused familiarity with competence and seniority with ability. She was thinking about Section C, the orange blinking printer, the desk wedged beside the cable organizer. She was thinking about what it meant to have the authority to ensure that no one with something real to offer ever got filed away in a corner and handed a documentation roll, because the room had already decided who they were before they sat down. By the time she reached the river, she already knew. She had known since the window. She just needed the walk to confirm it. She called Kwon Sung-min at 6:52 the following morning. He answered on the second ring. "I'll take it," she said. "On one condition." "Name it," he said. "Full authority to restructure hiring, performance evaluation, and leadership criteria across every office. No legacy appointments protected by seniority alone. Competence is the only currency." A pause. "Done," he said. "And one more thing," she said. "Go ahead." "I start at ShinTech," she said. "Here. This floor. I want to build the model where the problem was visible." Another pause. "Longer this time. I'll have the contracts prepared by end of day," he said. She walked off the elevator on the 14th floor the following Monday at 8 a.m. Same second-hand laptop bag. Same convenience store coffee. The receptionist looked up, started to reach for the visitor badge tray. Stopped because something in the way Zara moved across that floor had changed, and the body understands authority before the mind catches up to explain it. Zara walked past Section C without looking at it. She walked past the server room, past the glass-walled meeting space, past the row of engineers who had spent 3 weeks solving the wrong problem. She walked to the corner office at the end of the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Han River visible in the distance, Seoul arranged below like a system she was already reading. She set her coffee on the desk. She set her laptop bag down. She stood at the window for a moment, looking out at the city, at the river catching morning light, at the particular view that belonged to people who had stopped asking for permission and started building the thing they came to build. Then she turned around. Park Ha-jun was standing in the doorway. He looked at the office, then at her, then at the nameplate that had been mounted beside the door that morning. Zara Mitchell, Chief Technology Officer. He was quiet for a long time. "I owe you more than an apology," he finally said. "Yes," she said. "You do." She sat down. "So start with this. Pull every contractor file from the last 3 years. I want to know who else ShinTech put in Section C and what they were actually capable of." Park Ha-jun straightened. "Yes," he said. And then, after a pause, "Ms. Mitchell." It was the same name he had said on her first day. The same 2 words. But they meant something entirely different now. "That will be all, Mr. Park," she said. He nodded, turned, left. Zara looked out at Seoul. She thought about the hearing room, the contractor desk, the orange blinking printer, the 11 minutes. She thought about every room that had tried to make her smaller than she was. Then she opened her laptop, and she got to work. They didn't lose a contractor. Kwon Sung-min told the ShinTech board 3 weeks later, when the restructuring plan landed on their table. They had a chief technology officer sitting in Section C, and they gave her a documentation role. The board was silent. "The question," he said, "is how many others are out there?" And that, right there, is the question this entire story was asking from the beginning. Not just about Zara, about every person filed away in a corner, because a room made its decision before they spoke. If this story moved you, share it. If you know someone who needs to hear it, send it to them. Subscribe for more stories like this, and drop one word in the comments that describes Zara Mitchell. Just one word. We want to read every single one.